Yo, what's up, y'all? Yo, what's up? We're back on our scary vibes today. Today we got every psycho killer explained in 13 minutes. Now, I'm familiar with a few psycho killers, but not all of them. Like, let's see, I know the Zodiac Killer, I know Jack the Ripper, I know Ted Bundy, I think I know the Killer Clown if he's talking about John Wayne Gacy, I know the Night Stalker, I know Charles Manson, Milwaukee Cannibal. I don't know who that's supposed to be. Is that supposed to be Jeffrey Dahmer? I don't know. But I know a little bit. But let's go in depth about every psycho killer. And mind y'all, it's dark outside. Actually, you know what? It is dark outside. Let me set the vibe for y'all. Should I? Will I regret that?
No, that's not what I'm thinking.
You know what? I got to. All right, y'all. I set the mood. It's dark now.
Killer. The Zodiac Killer was a murderer who
Zodiac
seemed to
Killer.
not only kill for the sake of it,
I know
but
him.
rather the media attention that
Word, he loved attention.
To him, at the end of the day, it was all just a game.
There was like a lot of
Catch
clues
me
and
if you
stuff
can.
that he used to leave.
He loved the idea of this game between him and the police and enjoyed the fear he caused.
It was like a cat and
He would
mouse
send
game.
very detailed letters to the police and the media telling them information about the murderers that only the killer would know. He also added a sense of mockery to the police as he sent letters with secret codes saying they could show who he was if solved. The Zodiac's crimes began with the shooting of two teenagers in a lover's lane in Benicia.
I knew that.
in
I knew
December
how it started.
1968. Over the next year, he claimed several more victims, taunting authorities with messages.
I think-
he would choose young couples.
Yeah, I was just about to say
in
that he would kill
places as
couples.
victims and carefully planned these actions to make sure he got as much attention as possible to attract the police.
Fiend for attention.
Despite an intense
Oh,
investigation
man.
and hundreds of potential suspects, the Zodiac Killer only had DNA evidence.
He got no
pointing to
attention at
different
home.
Suspects, but he
Now
was
he
never
wants
identified.
to take it out
His
on
letters claimed he had killed as many
innocent
as 37 people, though authorities could only link him to 5 confirmed murders.
Word?
The Killer Clown. John Wayne Gacy.
Yeah,
would be
I know John
Pogo
Wayne
the
Gacy.
Clown during local community
This is a very
events in
interesting
Sheridan.
serial killer to me.
He would go on to be the mass murderer who would go on to kill 33 young men in his home
33.
in Norwood Park Township, Illinois.
Goodness
Between
grief.
1972 and 1978.
Before we start this video, RIP to everybody that was killed in these tragic events. Condolences to their families. And yeah, you know what I'm saying? I'm watching this to gain some more knowledge on these terrible people. But yeah, RIP to everybody.
He lured at least 33 young men and boys to his home after advertising jobs in public areas. Once they were inside, he would for them before
I didn't know he used to do fake job offers, like, oh, I got a job, come see me.
or suffocating them to death.
I knew he used
This
to
came an end
strangle
in
and suffocate them.
1978 when the police discovered a significant number of human remains buried in the crawl space of his home and the surrounding area. The iceberg went deeper as the investigation revealed that he had been carefully recording his crimes in journals and keeping mementos
For real?
from his victims. All this had been a game to him, and it said that it brought him so much happiness. In 1980,
Weirdo.
Gacy was found guilty of 33 counts of murder and was sentenced to death. But even with the
Death
fact that his
sentence?
life was coming to an end, his final words were, "Kiss my A."
See, people like
Ted
that.
Bundy. On the surface, like many serial killers, Ted Bundy was said to be a charming and charismatic
Yeah, I know
guy.
Ted Bundy.
And Bundy would almost
He used to
always
use his looks.
his charisma to gain the next victim's trust.
Yeah.
Bundy
He
was
would rizz
good
up
at talking
girls and then-
seemed nice, which made people trust him. This was a trick to make it easier for him to find
man.
a victim. For almost 4 years, he would go on to commit over 30 murders with no
Bro.
one suspecting any.
Killing 30 people isn't. Can't even speak. Killing 30 people is insane. Like, if you've met somebody who killed a person, you're like scared. You're like, he killed a person or she killed a person. You're like, that's crazy. But 30 individual people, that's wild.
Because of how nice he was. And with this, between 1974 and 1978, Bundy went on a multi-state killing spree, primarily
I feel like after the first few, they start getting cocky. They're like, I haven't been caught yet. I'm never going to get caught now. So they just keep going and keep going.
young women and girls. He would lure his victims by posing as an authority figure or pretending to need help, using things like pretending to be hurt and using crutches or a sling to manipulate victims.
See, I didn't know that. He used to pose as like a fake cop.
But also provided an opportunity to get them close to
that's like straight out of a movie.
To brutally and murder them. Bundy's killing methods were particularly gruesome, as he often revisited the crime scenes to engage in acts of necrophilia.
That's
What's
disgusting.
worse is that he would decapitate at least 12 of his victims and keep their severed heads to remember them.
I never knew that.
He would do these murders almost regularly. Bundy was able to evade capture for years due to his ability to blend in with society. When he was a mass murderer, he outwardly seemed like a regular guy.
Word.
He
He just looked like
women, had a job and wasn't socially awkward.
Looked
During
like
his
any
initial
regular
trial in
dude.
Florida, Bundy became his own lawyer and attempted to portray himself as a victim of pornography and dysfunctional family life.
Nigga,
However,
what?
the evidence against him was overwhelming, and he was eventually convicted and sentenced to death.
Death
Milwaukee
sentence.
Cannibal. From necrophilia, cannibalism, and permanent preservation of body parts from his victims, Jeffrey Dahmer nearly
Yup.
got
I knew it was about this
all
guy,
had it not been
Jeffrey
for one
Dahmer.
victim who managed to get away. Jeffrey Dahmer
If y'all,
usually
let me know if y'all watched the Jeffrey Dahmer show on Netflix. That was crazy. I know a lot of like people didn't like it because the family seen it and stuff, how they would think about it. But I don't know. It was crazy what this guy was doing, man. Sick stuff. And I also watched the real life interview of the guy that escaped. Like he was detailing what exactly he did and how he got out. I think that was crazy.
lure men, primarily young African-American men and boys, back to his apartment, where he would put drugs in their drinks, and afterward, he would do what he pleased with them. After killing his victims, he would dismember their bodies and keep various body parts, such as skulls, hands, and genitalia.
Weird.
Even eating
And
some of the body parts. He tried different experiments.
Wouldn't he, like,
on
put them in
victims,
acid
hoping it
to,
would
like,
put
burn
in a
them?
sort of zombie-like state by using a drill and harmful chemicals, thinking this would make them stay forever. In total, Dahmer was convicted
Weirdo.
of killing 15 men and boys, although he confessed to additional murders. Perhaps the worst part is that the number might have been lower, as one of his victims, who was an underage boy from Laos, managed to escape his house even though Dahmer had drilled a hole in his head. Still, the police returned to Dahmer's house as Jeffrey would lie that he was his drunk boyfriend. Dahmer
If y'all watched the show, y'all know exactly what he's talking about. Bro, that got me so mad. He escaped, right? He was like drugged, and then he escaped. The cops came because the neighbors called the cops, and Jeffrey Dahmer was like, "No, it's just my boyfriend. He's drunk." When it's obviously a little kid, because the neighbor's daughter knows him from school. And they're like, "No, he needs help. He's drugged. You can't see that he's mad young." Jeffrey Dahmer said, "That's just my drunk boyfriend." And the cops brought him back into the house with Jeffrey Dahmer. I was like, ain't no way, bro. I was about to crash out through the screen.
was eventually caught
That
in
got me so mad.
1991 and sentenced to life in prison, but would later die after an inmate beat him to death.
Yeah, I know that.
Jack the
I watched a
Ripper.
video on the
Five
guy who
victims
killed
and five
Jeffrey
throats
Dahmer.
cut with
Something like
almost
that.
surgeon-like precision. Jack the Ripper's death toll wasn't as high per se as other serial killers, but he did do one thing the others
Wait.
couldn't. He got away. The murders took place in the poor Whitechapel district.
Yeah, I know it was in London. Wasn't it like, yeah, the
1800s?
1800s?
Prostitutes who he most likely
That was
paid
a
for their
minute
services,
ago.
but unknown to them,
1888.
they had been paid to die. Unlike these days,
Who was born back
reports like
then?
these
Who
would be
witnessed this?
everywhere on either social media or the news. In the 19th century, everyone had to rely on the newspaper or rumors going around, which made everything all the much worse. The
Jack the
newspapers would
Ripper.
talk about how the Ripper would remove the internal organs of his victims. Carefully
Bro, you know one of the
every-
most interesting videos I watched? It was like one of the first ever serial killers. It was this guy, and he would make this like, I think it was a hotel or something. It was like a super hotel. He would make it like so complex so you can't get out. It was kind of like a maze or something. That was crazy. If y'all know what I'm talking about, y'all know.
Everything intact. At the time, education on things
If you
like
know, you
human
know.
anatomy was only reserved for the richest in society, meaning the public thought they had not only a murderer, but one who was bright and possibly quite rich. And in 1888, after the first body was discovered, more kept coming. You can imagine
Bodies
the
kept
terror
popping up.
everyone was in at the time. Rumors going about that he could be a vampire who drank the victim's blood, or that he was a sort of vengeful spirit.
They didn't know what was going on. They just seen bodies popping up.
Society. With most of the victims being poor prostitutes who were forced into that life to make ends meet, most of the authorities at the time thought they had it coming. And
Word, the cops probably didn't care.
but even despite the intensive investigation at the time,
People are dying. How do you not care?
Throughout the years, Jack the Ripper's identity remains one of the biggest mysteries to this day. Charles Manson.
I know this
Manson
guy.
was essentially a cult leader who formed a
I thought they said he never killed
the
anyone, though.
Manson family in the late 1960s, which attracted a devoted group of followers, mostly young women, with his ideologies and charismatic personality. He preached a
This
darker
guy's a weirdo.
philosophy that involved starting a race war he called Helter Skelter, with the plan being to commit murders against celebrities and blame it on particular black gangs. In August 1969, under Manson's
Black?
orders, members of his cult murdered pregnant actress Sharon Tate, along with 4 others, at her home in Los Angeles. The following night, they killed couple Leno and Rosemary LaBianca in their home, leaving messages written in blood at both crime scenes that read, "Death to pigs." Pigs referring to the police officers to make it seem that this was committed by gangs instead. You see, Manson didn't even physically commit the murders himself.
Yeah, that's what I was
but
saying.
instead
He never actually
manipulated
killed
his
anybody.
followers into carrying out the acts.
He was just calling the shots.
Convicted of conspiracy to commit murder and received the death penalty, which was later changed to life in prison. The Butcher of Plainsfield.
About Charles Manson, I seen a interview with him before. He was just being so weird. Like the way he was moving was just like. And the interview was like, "Who are you?" And he was like, "I'm nobody," and then just started laughing. I just thought that was weird. I was like, "What is bro on? Who does he think he is?" I know Ed Gein, Leatherface.
On their family farm in the small town of
Why they giving them these nicknames like the Butcher of Plainfield?
Wisconsin. After his mother died in 1945, Gaines' already fragile mental state deteriorated further, leading him down a dark path of necrophilia, grave robbery, and finally, murder.
Weird.
In 1957, when local authorities investigating a local woman's disappearance had to search his property, the quiet farmer's house turned out to
This is
be
off topic,
one
but
of
I like the
most
art
things
style of this
in
video.
murder history.
I see how he got the little
Household
drawings
items
and
clothing from human
popping them up.
skin
That's
and
hard.
Body parts, including skulls used as bowls and human skin furniture. Further investigation revealed that Gain had removed numerous corpses from local graveyards, collecting body
Bro, I don't understand
parts
how
and
people
preserving
can do
them
stuff
in a
like
bizarre
this.
Obsession with his dead mother. His obsession eventually led to the murder of 2 women whose bodies were found mutilated and dismembered on his property. Gain was eventually diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and ruled legally
Schizophrenic.
insane. However, his crimes were still so disturbing that, to the point where the horror films Psycho and The Texas Chainsaw Massacre were made from this insane story. The Night Stalker.
Richard Ramirez, I know him.
A series of murders would be committed in the form of home invasions and murders across California. The murder methods were particularly evil, as he would break into homes late at night, brutalize
Night
his
Stalker.
victims
Bro,
with
that's
beatings and
scary.
assaults, and often commit satanic
Bro.
rituals before murdering them. The police were possibly
No thanks. Y'all know that one Tom and Jerry meme where they keep slamming the door and locking it? I would do that with every single door in my house, bro. What if you have like glass windows? Like, nah. At that point, you gotta get a gun. You gotta shoot him on sight, cause there is no way, bro. You can you even sleep knowing that there's a night stalker like trying to break in your house and kill you? You got it ready to up that blick.
looking for his victims every night. He was known to leave satanic symbols at the crime scenes, leading to his Night Stalker name. His crimes weren't just murders, but extreme violence, sadism, and a seeming lack of remorse or empathy for his victims. In some of the victims' bodies, it was seen that they had been involved in prolonged acts of torture against their victims. He would inflict a lot of physical pain and psychological torment. it was pretty clear that the killer simply enjoyed torture.
So he was like tortured them? I didn't even know
Largest
that.
manhunts in California history, with over 200 detectives working the case. In August
200
1985,
detectives?
The killer was recognized and beaten by a group of residents in East Los Angeles before being arrested. And with that,
I like
Richard
that.
Ramirez, residents in
Is this not community coming together?
The killer was recognized and beaten by a group of residents in East Los Angeles before being arrested. And with that, Richard Ramirez, the night.
I'm happy they weren't scared. Like, oh, that's him. They're like, nah, that's him. Look how many of us there is. Let's go. Now that's hard. How they just jumped him.
Stalker had been caught. During his trial, Ramirez embraced his Night Stalker persona, often flashing a pentagram to the cameras and taunting the families of his victims. What is even more insane is that during Richard Ramirez's trial in 1989, one of the jurors, Phyllis Singletary, unexpectedly passed away. Singletary was found dead in her apartment. Her death was attributed to a lethal combination of alcohol and prescription drugs, specifically Valium and the painkiller codeine. Singletary's death occurred during the penalty phase of Ramirez's trial, and because of this, a lot of the people at the time thought Ramirez had caused the death. He was eventually convicted of 13 counts of murder, 5 attempted murders, 11.
They just assumed that he
burglaries.
killed her, like poisoned her or something.
Due to the incompetence of the
The Rostov. I've never heard of this one.
Techniques at the time, the Rostov Ripper would go on.
Oh nah, that haircut he's chopped.
At least 53 women and children in the Russian town
children, women,
and Novocherkassk.
Hey, where was this at?
1973 and
You said Russia?
His victims ranged from 7 to 36, and he would often engage in acts of necrophilia and cannibalism after the killings. Andre
So
Chikatilo
weird.
preyed upon vulnerable individuals by exploiting their trust or desperation. He would often approach his victims in public places such as bus or train stations, markets, or parks, offering them money, food, or assistance. He presented himself as a friendly and helpful figure.
So he would just be like, "Oh, I'm your friend."
To isolated locations where he could carry out his heinous acts without interruption. Chikatilo would also promise financial assistance or aid to women who were struggling financially or in need of assistance. In fact, the Soviet Union during the 1980s was bad to live. The victims were desperate. He would do this before subjecting them to acts of violence, including and even biting off their tongues and other body parts.
Ew.
Despite an investigation
Bro,
by
why
Soviet authorities, Chikatilo remained at large for over a decade. His killing spree finally came to an end in
10 years?
when he was arrested after a routine document check.
But y'all know how long 10 years is of doing this
During
sick,
his trial, Chikatilo
twisted,
confessed to the murders and
weird
described
stuff.
in chilling detail the pleasure he derived from the acts of violence and mutilation.
Death
he was eventually found
sentence.
guilty of 52 murders and sentenced to death by firing squad in 1990.
Firing squad. I never heard it. Wait, we gotta do some research. What's a firing squad death? Stay with me, y'all. Look, it'll be 10 seconds. Yeah, y'all don't even know that I'm almost done already. Look, so quick. Firing squad death. Yup. 1 second, y'all. I'm too quick. You don't even notice. Too quick. Oh. That's when they just have a whole bunch of people just shoot you at once. I've seen that in shows before. Like they like line them up against the wall and then they just on 3 just nah, that's crazy. That's in Russia. That's probably way crueler than what they would have did in the United States. Cause the US they probably would have given the death penalty, but not that severe. They probably did the lethal injection or whatever. But they full on just This was a great video though, man. I learned a lot about these serial killers. RIP to all the victims. I'm glad all these guys are out of here. Except for nobody. Jack the Ripper obviously dead. Nobody knows who it was. Man, that's crazy how some of these go unsolved for like years and years and years. Nobody ever finds out. That's crazy. But y'all know what to do. Make sure y'all like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'm gonna catch y'all later.